You're listening to The LeaderFactor, a podcast where we take leadership principles and distill them into actionable behaviors, shareable frameworks, and scalable initiatives. Here are your hosts, Tim and Junior.
We live? We're rolling? We're rolling, Tim.
Okay, let's roll.
Welcome, everyone, to today's LeaderFactor webinar, the Coaching and Accountability Matrix. We are super excited to have you with us today. We have some early risers.
Yeah, you know what I just learned?
Or some late sleepers.
It's 3 a.m. in Wellington, New Zealand. I just learned that.
Who is in Wellington? Good for you.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for being here. I see Pakistan, Canada, Texas, England, Arizona. Wow. We got a lot of time zones
Belgium,
going on.
Yeah, we do.
So thank you for staying up late or getting up early. Or maybe you're just kicking off the day. Maybe it's the middle of the day. Regardless, we are super excited to have you back. It's been a while since we've done our last webinar, hasn't it?
It has. Glad to be back.
Glad to be back live. Glad to be in the studio. A huge thank you to the LeaderFactor team who's on the other side of this and here with us.
Yeah,
the whole production crew putting this on. So thank you in the chat for the LeaderFactor team for helping make all of this possible. Could not do it without the team. That is for sure. We've come a long way since we started our first webinar.
We have
37 webinars.
Is that what it is?
Or whatever it is.
That's the count.
300 podcast episodes or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So if you've joined a LeaderFactor webinar before, go ahead and let us know in the chat if you are a regular on the LeaderFactor podcast. We would love to hear that as well. Make yourself known. And if you have any topic suggestions along the way, would love to know those as well. We've got some great episodes that are forthcoming. So since the last webinar, we've been hard at work.
Yes.
We've accomplished a few things. I jotted down just a few things in my notes that have happened since the last time we were here. We've shipped a few 100,000 lines of code. Our CTO wishes we had eliminated a few 100,000 lines of code, but we've shipped quite a bit. We formally trained over 16,000 leaders in half-day workshops since the last time we were here. We've added 9 languages to LeaderFactor app. We've collected tens of thousands of surveys, recorded over 1,200 formal client success calls, and we just crossed 1 million data points in PS Index.
You know, that's my favorite factoid, Junior, because we are data-driven. And so to cross that million threshold is quite an accomplishment, I think.
So today we're talking about the Coaching and Accountability Matrix. I'll start us off with some introductions for those of you who are new to LeaderFactor. So our institutional mission is to influence the world for good at scale. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing today's webinar. We don't have to do these webinars. We don't have to do the podcast. It's a lot of work, but
it's a lot of fun, though.
It is a lot of fun. It supports our institutional mission. And our vision is to enable leaders to lead themselves, lead the team, and lead the organization. What do you think about that?
That's our framework. That's how we view leadership. It's how we view what we do. It's how we view the natural progression of leadership as well.
And our values are the RISE values: respect, integrity, skill, and effort. And we really appreciate that fourth one, effort. And again, I just can't stop saying thank you to the team to be able to do this. And I'm super grateful for the technology that allows us to do this. We have people from everywhere. So I think it's worthwhile to scroll in the chat, see where everybody's from, and just acknowledge what a cool thing it is that we're all here together. And we all have interest in leadership. Otherwise, I don't think you'd be attending this at 3 a.m. So who are all of you? That's who we are. Today's event, you probably fall into 3 buckets if you're attending this event. The first is aspiring leaders. We'll say people leaders, those who yet to have direct reports.
Individual contributors.
Contributors. And then those who are already people leaders. They have direct reports.
Mm-hmm. They're leading teams.
They're leading teams. And finally, a third group, and there are probably quite a few of you out there, those who help leaders inside HR, inside L&D. And that's a special group that's near and dear to our hearts because it's who we partner with institutionally every single day, helping organizations like yours around the globe to implement content like we're going to talk about today to help leaders become better.
You know what I love about what we do, Junior, is that the people in HR, the people in talent development, the people in human capital, L&D, are great people.
They sure are.
Around the world. And so it's such a privilege to work with this high caliber of individual everywhere. It's amazing.
It's feedback that we get all the time when we're onboarding new employees that are client facing, especially if they're in client success or they're in sales.
It's true.
They'll come back after the first few engagements, the first few calls and meetings with clients, and they'll say, "This is weird.
Yeah.
Everyone's so nice. Everyone's so genuine."
Yeah.
And so I count it as
it's the business that we're in.
It is. And it's a great privilege to be able to work with all of you. So in turn, we're going to hopefully create some value for you today. Okay. So let's go through our agenda. We've got 5 things that we want to cover. One is the current state. As LeaderFactor, we have a unique vantage point in the world of leadership because we're dealing with organizations all around the globe, every industry, every sector, and we're seeing boots on the ground, what's going on in leadership. What's going on at the macro level, what's going on at the ground level inside organizations, what's happening geographically in different areas of the world. What do you think about that?
Well, I often like to say, Junior, that we're in the pattern recognition business. And we have, as you say, a global view across sectors, across industries. And we're going to be talking about a pattern and a gap. The gap is the pattern that we see all the time, everywhere. And that's why we're having this webinar today.
Well, and you have a unique seat as well because you're dealing most often at the executive level. And so some of the biggest organizations in the world are giving you information about what's going on inside their organizations.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful to have you here to be able to share that with us. And on that note, we'll do just a couple brief intros in case you haven't met us before. I'm Junior. I'm the COO here at LeaderFactor, and co-hosting with me today is Dr. Tim Clark.
Good to be with you.
Tim's an Oxford-trained social scientist, is the founder and CEO of our organization, LeaderFactor, and is the author of the 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. Many of you may know him from that book, maybe Epic Change, a few other books that Tim's written. But really excited to be here with you today. So the gap that you talked about, then we're going to move into solution. We're not going to just frame the problem and then leave you there. We're going to give you something to do about it. And the solution is where we'll be spending most of our time today talking about coaching and talking about accountability. 4th is a big thank you. We mentioned how great you all are, and we're going to tell you that a couple of times. We're also going to show you that. We're going to show you a thank you, and that show you is going to be at the end of today's conversation. So stick around. We'll have something that we think will be very, very valuable to you and your organization as a thank you from us. And 5th, not least, we're gonna take some time for Q&A. So we'll leave 10 minutes at the back end of today's conversation, around minute 50 or so, and we'll see if we can get your questions. So if you have questions during today's conversation, go ahead and throw them either in the chat if it's something technical, something practical, and our team can help you. We've got a bunch of people in the chat, or you can throw it in the Q&A. That will go into a big bucket of questions, and Jillian will help us by picking a few of those out at the end of the conversation, and we'll take those off the cuff.
Great.
Here's a sneak peek of what's coming as the show you thank you. If you haven't been in LeaderFactor app, this may look foreign to you. If you have, you'll feel right at home. But a lot of the content that we're going to be going through today will be available inside the LeaderFactor app. So Tim, I want to start off with a question to you. Mm-hmm. What is the objective of a leader?
Well, there are 3 domains. As we said, right? Lead self, lead the team, lead the organization. And I think what we want to focus on today is moving the transition from leading self as an individual contributor to leading a team, having direct reports, and being able to lead through others. So moving from direct to indirect contribution. That's a difficult transition, but I think that's what we want to focus on today.
It's a difficult transition, and it's underweighted in our world of leadership development. We don't key off of that as much as we should.
Yeah.
Part of the point here is that we can't do this work, whatever our work is, regardless of our organization. We can't do it without other people. We can't do it alone. We need leverage. And so much of leadership is about leverage. And the conversation today will focus on that point. How do we gain better leverage?
So, Junior, a way of saying it is, if you move from being an individual contributor to leading a team, you're stepping into the world of leverage. At least you should be.
You should be.
But what we're finding and have found across really the world is that many are not making that successful transition and stepping into the world of leverage. becoming a force multiplier, learning how to scale influence and impact. They're struggling with that.
Yeah. We're going to ask 2 different questions, and we want you to reply in the chat. So here's our first question. What percentage of your team's critical thinking do you feel responsible for? So we want a number in the chat. And if you've got teammates on this call, give us a healthy range. That will work too.
Yeah.
We want to see 100 out the gate. That was a quick response. 100%, 70, 85, 80.
These
100.
are some high numbers, Junior.
These are really interesting, actually.
These are some high numbers.
60, 50, 10. Thanks for blowing up the chat, guys. Everyone is really going to town here. 100%, 50, 25, 50, 50, 40. Okay.
90, 80, 75. 62.5.
Approximately 62.5% I feel responsible for.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for answering that question. We're going to go to...
And do you see a pattern? We'll come back to it, but do you see a pattern?
Yeah, you see the pattern?
Yeah.
Pattern recognition business, something's happening.
Yeah.
Okay, question 2. How many of you feel more accountable for your team's performance than your team members do? This is also an interesting question. Go ahead and throw that answer in the chat. Me, hand raisers. Yes, big time.
Yeah.
Yes. 90, yes. Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
Trend spotting.
Yes, another pattern.
Yeah. So the 2 patterns here, which probably are obvious at this point, are these. And this speaks to the gap, the problem that we've identified. That often, and the way that it's posed on the slide is the poll, but leaders feel like they do the majority of the critical thinking on their team. And they feel mostly responsible. They feel the lion's share of responsibility for the outcomes, the results on their team. How does that make a leader feel? That, man, I've got to do all the critical thinking and I'm almost exclusively responsible for what happens. How do you think they feel?
Well, I would just put the question to the audience, is there a problem with that? Right? And I think there's a massive problem with that. And it is an acute, chronic gap issue that we see across the board. We have to acknowledge that we continue to move away, Junior, from the imperial model of leadership, where the leader is the repository of answers, the leader is the oracle, and we know we're moving away, but look at how this paradigm is so entrenched. And even if it's not entrenched, even if you don't embrace that paradigm, there are still way too many leaders that are doing most of the critical thinking and feel most of the ownership for the outcomes.
And many of them are doing it in good faith.
They are.
And that's an important point.
It is.
It's not that they're just trying to take all of it, although that sometimes happens.
Right.
They're willing, if they would have it otherwise, if they had the tools and the know-how to be able to do that.
I had a Fortune 500 CEO say to me the other day, the biggest single problem or need or challenge that I have with my management population is a lack of critical thinking skills. So there you go. That's a key insight.
Yeah, it is a key insight, especially if they're exclusively responsible for the critical thinking.
That's right.
Okay, so here's the solution. Sneak peek at the solution. This is the coaching and accountability matrix. Some of you may have seen this in the past. Some of you, this may be your first time. And you'll notice there are 2 axes. What we're going to be doing in this conversation is breaking this model apart into its component pieces and then putting it back together to help you understand. So we're not going to go through this whole thing right now. We just want to give you an idea of where we're going. And you'll notice 2 axes. On the x-axis, we have coaching. On the y-axis, we have accountability, the name of the webinar. Then we have a transfer of critical thinking that's happening as we're coaching, and a transfer of ownership that's happening as we're transferring accountability. So if those 2 things are really low on our teams and we want them to be high, we're going to help you do that so that you and your leaders can eventually answer to those 2 questions. I participate in critical thinking, but I'm not exclusively responsible for it. And yes, I am responsible for some of the outcomes, but it's shared across the team.
That's right.
So how did we get there? How did we get to the place where a Fortune 500 CEO comes to you and says, this is my biggest problem. This is my biggest need. It's a lack of formal leadership training. And that may seem trite, it may seem on the nose. Yeah, just train your people better. But this is systemic. So I would love if you could give us an understanding, broad strokes of the problem here in leadership development and why we're calling this out as a need.
Well, I think, Junior, I alluded to it before. There's a clash of paradigms, right? As we're moving from the imperial model to a collaborative, inclusive model. So the first thing is, do you conceive of your role as a leader in the correct way? You're trying to become a force multiplier. You're trying to step into the world of leverage. You're trying to scale influence and impact. How do you do that? There's only one way you can do that with each of your direct reports. You've got to transfer critical thinking to them, and you have to transfer ownership to them. So when we talk about coaching generally, people say, oh yeah, I need to be a good coach and coaching's important. They are grossly understating the importance of what has to happen here.
Yeah.
Coaching may well be the single most important skill in being able to lead a team, because it's the mechanism through which you transfer ownership and critical thinking. And if you can't do that, you really are not leading a team and you're not creating leverage in the organizational sense.
Well, and if we don't do this well, we experience some symptoms. And in the chat, we've got a lot. Amy Rogers says, we're exhausted. Penny, fatigue, scared, big problem. Alicia, overwhelmed. Randy, I'm the only one with skin in the game. Sharp, hence the burnout, exhausted. And so if we don't learn how to do this, you can see how we end up there. And I think a lot of leaders feel this. Mm-hmm. A lot of leaders see that in their people and in themselves. And so we're here to say there's a solution to this problem. And one of the things we have to start with is an orientation around the fact that it's not a them problem. It's an us problem. We, the leaders.
That's what we start with.
That's where we have to start. Because we can say, well, they're just the ones that aren't taking ownership. They're not doing the critical thinking. But there are a whole host of things that we can do and a bunch of tools that we'll share today that will help us do that.
And let's remember, Junior, the leader sets the terms of engagement with each direct report, right? What's the relationship? What are the expectations? And how should you think about your role? That's the leader's job.
It is. And we talked at the beginning about LeaderFactor's values, helping people lead self, team, and organization. And we wanted to back way up and use this as a slide to help frame the conversation to understand the transition that happens between lead self and lead the team. So when you move from lead self to lead the team, something happens. You move from direct contribution to indirect contribution.
Right.
Help us understand that.
It's the most fundamental transition in the way that you contribute that you will ever experience in professional life.
It's a big statement.
Even if you become the CEO one day, Junior, you'll never go through such a fundamental transition from direct to indirect. So what does that imply? It implies that we need new skills. It implies an emotional and a psychological transition to get there. You are now contributing primarily through other people. So how do you do that? And we often talk about coaching and people say, oh yeah, we need to be a good coach and I need coaching skills. But what is the fundamental objective? It's to learn how to contribute through others. It's to learn how to transfer critical thinking and ownership. That's how you step into the world of leverage.
And that's the next slide. You have to hold people accountable and you have to coach. And those are two things that you really didn't have to do much of as an individual contributor. You were responsible almost exclusively for yourself. When you're thrown into that role, and what normally happens is you become technically proficient, you do really well as an IC,
right? And
then they give you the nod and say, great, now you're in charge of a team because you did so well by yourself.
Yeah. But and maybe you are good at collaborating.
For sure.
And that's fantastic as an individual contributor. But collaborating is not the same thing as coaching.
Say more.
Because you have to transfer the ownership and the critical thinking. And so we're talking about different skills, added skills. It's not just collaboration. It's not just working together, right? So you are now responsible to accelerate the development of your direct report. And you're also responsible to improve the performance of the team.
I would be interested. Everyone in the chat, are you seeing what we're seeing? Are you experiencing this where people are moving from an individual contributor role into a people leader role? They're moving from direct to indirect contribution, and we're having some problems. There's a little bit of friction there. I'd be interested to see. While you're answering that question, we're going to move into the definition. Oh, well, I don't even have to wait. You guys are right in there. Yes, absolutely. No skill support and learning how to do that.
Yeah.
The accountability piece is missing. Happens all the time. Yeah, and this is the great irony. And I still, for years and years and years, I'm wondering why this has to be ironic. That this is so important for an organization to do well, yet the resource and the time and the energy allocated to solving this problem is just not there.
And let me just make this point
most of the time.
Junior,
some organizations do it well.
You don't graduate from leading a team when you become a senior leader.
Yeah.
Because even if you go to the C-suite, you still have a team to lead.
Yeah.
And it becomes even more important, if anything. And so we've got to come to mastery with these skills and then continue to do them well throughout our professional lives.
I love Ken's comment. You mean to tell me this is not innate?
Exactly.
Exactly. I love that comment.
Yeah, thank you.
And yes, the training isn't there. Nobody trains for this. I'm glad that you are all seeing this problem because it's precisely the problem that we've identified and are going to solve. So if you hang around to the end, we're going to give you some tools to help you solve this problem. Okay, so what is coaching? A one-to-one or one-to-team dialogic process by which you facilitate development in the person being coached by doing what? Transferring critical thinking.
Yes.
So help me understand coaching. You said it's not collaboration. How much time do we spend developing leaders on the coaching front most of the time?
Very little. Sometimes we'll do a little bit of coaching. People do a little bit of coaching skills, but they don't understand that it's the fundamental mechanism for transferring ownership and critical thinking. I know I keep saying that a lot, but that is the primary objective of coaching. And it is the way that we are able to create the organizational leverage. So let's break this down a little bit, Junior.
Yep. We're going to go into what's called the coaching continuum. So if you remember, I don't know which way the camera's going, which way my axes should be, but X, Y, if you remember that first axis, that showed the tell to ask, the coaching continuum. So this is the first piece of that larger model that we're going to break down. And this runs from tell on one side of the spectrum to ask on the other side. All coaching is done through this. So when you're put in charge of other people and you communicate with them, you're doing one of two things. You're saying stuff or you're asking stuff. Nothing else.
That's it.
That's it.
That's your continuum. That's what you have to use.
And so every single leader tends toward a certain direction. Either they lean and are biased toward the tell end of the spectrum, or they lean ask. Now, there are times and seasons even that you should lean one way or the other. Great coaches use both ends of the spectrum and they do that well. But what if you make camp at the tail end? Yeah. What happens?
Well, think about that. Yeah, if you tend to spend most of your time at the tail end of the coaching continuum, then what are you doing? You're not transferring critical thinking. You're creating dependency, even learned helplessness. So that becomes a decelerator for the development and the growth of your people. That's pretty serious.
It's hugely serious.
Right?
So if you park there, you can see in the slide, it's an inhibitor to development. So how much critical thinking are you transferring if you're just telling? And that speaks to the imperial model that you talked about before.
Yeah.
If you assume that you are the repository of all answers, why would you ask a question?
Yeah.
And if you feel, maybe you don't even think you are, but feel that you should be, if that's what the institution has led you to believe, that you, by golly, better have the answer. If someone asks you a question, you may just come up with one.
That's right.
Here's an answer, take it, run with it. That's it.
And you can see, Junior, that also that ego and insecurity get in the way often, right? I remember having a boss and his paradigm was, come to me, I'll give you the answer and then dispatch you, send you on your way, right? It's as if he came from the first industrial revolution. But this is 2025. And that's not going to work, especially in a highly dynamic environment.
Well, not that it was ever ideal to begin with.
That's right.
Right? So I would be interested in the chat if you would let us know if you've experienced this. Leaders who live at the tail end of the spectrum. What does that look like? What consequences does that bring with it? On the flip side, we have ask. Ask is an accelerator of development. It enables discretion at the other side of the table. It's open-minded. There's autonomy inherent in asking questions.
Yeah.
That's where we thrive in dynamic environments, is by asking. Telling is assumptive. If the ground is shifting beneath our feet, as you probably have noticed it is, you can't rely on tell. You can't assume knowledge of the current state, because the current state's changing all the time. That's why ask becomes so important in the transfer of critical thinking. And here's an interesting point. Many leaders come to us and they feel bogged down in the mire of management. They don't have the leverage they want. They're tired, they're burned out, and they are answering, 80, 90% to that question, how much critical thinking are you doing on your team's behalf? If you want leverage and you're parked at the tail end of the spectrum, it should be no surprise to you that you're doing the lion's share of the critical thinking and that you don't have the leverage you would like. So what has to happen there in order to answer a lower number on that front? We have to take ownership and say, hey, there's something we can do about it. We need to become better at coaching from the ask end of the spectrum.
And you're going to have to move.
Yep.
You're going to have to move to the inquiry end, and you're going to have to learn how to lead more through questions than answers. And Junior, it's abundantly clear as we work with a lot of leaders around the world that the best leaders demonstrate a pattern of inquiry-based leadership.
Yeah.
They lead primarily at the ask end of the coaching continuum.
We've spoken pretty negatively of the tail end of the spectrum, but there's a time and a place for it. So maybe tell us a little bit about that. When is it appropriate?
Yeah, think about it. And for all of you who are watching, when would it be appropriate to use primarily the tail end of the coaching continuum? When does that make sense? Situationally, when does that make sense? Go ahead and throw it in the chat. In what kinds of situations do you need to be mainly at the tail end of the coaching continuum? You have any thoughts on that? Yeah. Because there are use cases where that is the right thing to do. You need to be there. Right?
I love the comments in the chat right now about both questions. Asking builds capacity. Yes, I think it's part of their role to tell and have all of the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Too much telling kills morale because of the micromanaging feel that it leads to. Harry, push versus pull culture. That's good. Safety issues, emergencies, true crisis. Okay, so now we're getting into when is tell appropriate. Safety, new to role.
Yep, new to role. Safety. Keep going. What else do we have, Junior?
Emergency. Earthquake evacuation.
Thank you.
Is evacuation best practice or is it still the doorway? I don't know. Command and control. When there's a fire. Yeah. Physical or metaphorical.
Right. So there are use cases.
Yeah.
But setting those aside, the bias should be to spend as much time at the ask end as you possibly can to lead through inquiry, because what are you doing? You're transferring the majority of the critical thinking, and that's exactly what we need to do.
I would be interested in the chat if you could tell us from the flip side. So when you have asked good questions and you've tended toward that end of the coaching continuum, what has your experience been? Has it been better? Have you learned to do that more over time? I'd also love to hear what's going on that front. Okay, empowered and valued. Yeah, these are good. I wish I could keep up with all of you. This is awesome.
It goes a little fast.
More innovation takes practice. We got a lot of people in this webinar. Okay, let's go into the next one, accountability. So someone asked, 500 chats ago, what accountability was. It's being answerable for performance. That's about as succinctly as we can put it. What would you say as we kind of dive into this piece, accountability?
It's the other thing you've got to transfer.
Yep.
So it can't be one or the other. We've got to transfer critical thinking. We've got to transfer ownership and all of the accountability. So they go together. If you can accomplish those two things, that is the litmus test for being a great coach. That's when you know that you're really doing it right.
And that's the other axis on the model that we talked about before. So we've talked about the coaching continuum, that x-axis. Now we're going to talk about accountability, the y-axis, and transferring that. So how do we do it? We're going to talk about accountability through the lens of the 3 levels of accountability. This is one of my favorite models. It really encapsulates a lot of what a leader needs to be good at to be effective. So walk us through task, process, outcome, accountability.
Sure.
What's going on here?
Yeah, so take a look at the y-axis. We have 3 levels of accountability. The first one is task. What is a task? A task is a basic, indivisible unit of work. So we take everything that we do, we break it up into tasks, and we say, you do this, and you do this, and I'll do this, and we have our tasks. We need to be able to complete our tasks at standard and on time. If a person can do that repeatedly, consistently, reliably, that means they've mastered task level accountability. But here's the thing with that, Junior. Task accountability is not a destination. It's not a place where you should set up camp and say, okay, I'm going to live here. It's actually a way station. So you need to keep progressing. You need to keep going. So you need to go to the second level, which is process. A process, think about this. What do we do with tasks in organizations? We put them together. We string them together in a sequence, and we call it a process. And a process is a string of tasks that we do on a repeating basis. And so what we want to do with our people is elevate them from task to process level accountability. Can you think of processes that we do, Junior?
Yeah, in the chat, let us know. What are some tasks, and then what are some processes? I can think of 1,000,001 processes. Launching a webinar is one.
Yeah.
You should see some of the process that we have.
How many tasks?
Yeah, more than one.
You put together, like hundreds.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Right? So that's a higher level of accountability. And then finally, we go to the highest level of accountability, which is outcome. Now, when we get to outcome level accountability, you'll notice the relationship between accountability and autonomy. To move to a higher level of accountability requires what? More autonomy. So if we go to the highest level of accountability, which is outcome, then we are transferring the maximum amount of autonomy to go with it. It has to be proportional. And what we're saying is that in management, when you're a people leader, when you have direct reports, we often see a mismatch between accountability and autonomy, where the person is given too much or too little autonomy to be able to perform and do what they've been asked to do. That mismatch creates a problem. Now, we're trying to transfer as much as we can, but the person has to have a demonstrated track record for that level of performance, right?
And if they don't, we're going to find ourselves in a world of hurt, because if we move immediately to outcome level accountability and they haven't shown their ability to perform at the level of the task or the process, things could go horribly wrong.
That's right.
So let's take the webinar as an example. A task might be to create a Zoom link for the webinar, just a single unit of work. Great, we can do that. Process might be to go through the pilot's checklist to make sure that everything is good to go. There are a lot of moving parts, a lot of variables. We've got website, we've got social, we've got email, newsletter, gear, hardware, software, team, roles, a million things.
Yeah.
Outcome level is let's have a smooth webinar.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you go to someone who hasn't shown the ability to go do the Zoom link, to go through the pilot's checklist, and you just say, yeah, just do the webinar.
Right.
How well is that going to go?
That's not going to go well.
It's not. And one of the things I liked, Dan said in here, sometimes transferring the critical thinking can be the long way around. It's the same way with accountability. It takes time to develop people to a place where they can operate at this level of accountability.
It does.
I've been on the side of giving it too early. That's my tendency. And that can cause problems. Withholding it can cause problems.
Right.
And so that's one of the arts. It's one of the pieces of the dance of management, is understanding where people are. And that's one of the cool things about doing it inside the app, is there are assessments for all of these things. You can plot people, you can see where they actually are and use that to inform your management style. But if you don't, and you just wing it, you don't take into consideration where the person is, it's going to be hard.
As we like to say, Junior, if you're not giving enough, based on the person's demonstrated level of performance, you're micromanaging.
Yeah.
Right? You're being paternalistic. Yeah. If you're giving too much, then you may be exhibiting the pattern of what we call an absentee landlord.
Yeah.
Which is not good either. So both of those are pathologies, right? Both of those are dysfunctional patterns.
Yeah. Too early, dense confidence. I love that. Joe, that's really good.
That's really good.
Because if you don't set them up for success and you give that too early, completely agree. And they may be so well-intentioned and they may have the work ethic and everything that they might need. But if they haven't shown the ability to do it and you're not giving them the tools and moving them along at a rate that's appropriate, that can be really tough and that can be hard to recover from.
Junior, I got to comment a little bit of a caveat here. The aspiration, if you're a coach and you have direct reports, you're leading a team, the aspiration is to move your people to higher levels of accountability and be able to give them more autonomy so that they can do more.
Yep.
Not every single employee will get to outcome accountability. And I think that we have to acknowledge that. And that's okay. We're trying to get as many people as we can to that because that creates maximum leverage.
Yeah.
And it also accelerates the development and the performance of our people. Yeah. But not everyone gets all the way to outcome. But that needs to be the aspiration.
Yeah.
So you've got to be situationally aware as a coach, and you coach people based on who they are and their capability and understanding them very well.
Yep.
But that's what we're trying to do.
Yep. Okay, here we go. So now we're going to combine the two models. So if you remember the name of the webinar, the name of the course, Coaching and Accountability Matrix. So we've talked about coaching, the tell to ask. We've talked about accountability, the 3 levels. Now we're going to put them together to create something new. So when we combine these 2 models, this is what we get, the coaching and accountability matrix. So let's go through this in a little bit more detail to help people orient themselves to what this model is. Yeah. So you can see your accountability on that y-axis, task, process, and outcome. You've got your coaching on the x-axis, tell, ask, and ask. The idea of this model that we've used for many years is that you can plot your direct reports on this model and ask yourself a few questions. At what level do I have to manage this person? Is it tell? It's a whole lot of telling. Maybe they're brand new. Maybe that's okay. But maybe they're not brand new and it's no longer okay. At what level of accountability do they operate? Is it task? Is it outcome? Is it process? And by doing so, you can figure out where they live. So let's say that they're brand new, right? You're probably box 1. So you're telling them a whole lot and they're operating at the level of the task.
That's right. And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Initially.
But
what's the goal?
The goal is to move them up and to the right.
Yeah.
Over time. Right.
If you're in box 1, we want to get you to box 2. If you're in box 5, we want to get you to box 6.
Right. But so often, Junior, we see leaders who are leading teams, they're trying to coach their people, and they don't have a diagnostic tool to help them understand the current state of an individual. Where are they, and how do I move them to the next step? Nor do they have a conception of coaching that says, oh, it's my job to transfer ownership and transfer critical thinking. So think about how ambiguous that is for a manager trying to lead and develop a direct report. We've got to have these tools to help us accelerate.
Well, let's explore the alternative. So let's say that we don't have tools like this. What's the charge given to us by the organization? More often than not, it's get me the results. That's usually what it is, often in isolation.
Yeah.
And then maybe we get and develop your people while you're at it.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Hit the numbers. Yep.
And build your team.
Yeah.
Grow your team, develop
whatever
your team.
That means.
Right. And if we haven't had experience doing that, we have no North Star, we have no tools, what are we going to do?
Right.
We probably won't even make it as far as understanding what it means to develop the people.
That's right.
So that's why we need to add this sort of language and these sorts of models and tools so that we can say, okay, your objective, new leader or existing leader who's been doing this for 30 years but hasn't figured this out.
That's right.
You're going to transfer critical thinking and ownership. That's your job.
That's right.
Here's how we're going to do it. You're going to transfer ownership by working people through task, process, and outcome level accountability. And put simply, you're going to transfer ownership by asking more questions. If you're going to lead through inquiry, you have a much better chance of developing the critical thinking of your people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I love this model so much. And so what the application does is it allows you to plot your people, and it uses an AI coach, which we'll get into later, which is super cool, to understand what you need to do to move them to the next box. But theoretically, you can understand in principle with nothing else. Okay, I have somebody in box 5 or 6, let's say, process level, and I want to move to outcome. What does that mean? It means that initially at the level of the outcome, I'm going to have to do some telling, right? Because it might be new, this new project that we're working on, the outcome that I'm wanting. And so I'm going to be pretty directive at the beginning. And I'm going to do so through telling, and we're going to move you to outcome. Now, once we're there, once I feel like you're at outcome, and we can do that through being directive, what am I going to slowly do over time? Less direction, more autonomy, less telling, more asking, so that we can get to a point where that person is outcome level accountable and is coached primarily through questions. Have you ever had this experience where you've had a direct report or someone you've worked with that you've been able to coach this way? They've been at outcome level accountability and you can primarily lead through inquiry. That's one of the most beautiful things
It is.
in all of management. Not everyone will get there, but those who do, it's beautiful to work with these people.
I want to add a point, Junior, and for all of you watching, take a look at the coaching and accountability matrix, and I want you to notice something. At tell level accountability, you have boxes 1, 2, and 3. As you help move a person through those boxes, that is a journey of mastery at task accountability. Then you move up to process accountability, and you have another journey of mastery that goes from box 4 to 5 to 6. And then finally, there's a third journey of mastery at outcome level accountability. You go from box 7 to 8 to 9. So you said a minute ago, Junior, that we're trying to help our direct reports grow and develop. Well, we've got to operationalize what that means. And so the first step is we have to understand where they are, current state. And then the destination, the immediate destination is the next box. We don't skip boxes. We can't, because we're transferring critical thinking and we're transferring ownership. So we have to go to the next box. That's the next natural step of progression. And so when you create a coaching plan for them, you focus on what is needed to get them into the next box. We're not skipping around. We don't skip 1 or 2 or 3 boxes. That's not how development works in human capital.
I want to call out some of the things that are going on in the chat because it's amazing. Wilson, my employee, used to call me Socrates because I asked him so many questions. I love that. And hey, the Socratic method works for a reason.
Yes.
And then Julie, I really appreciate everyone sharing their perspectives and experiences so freely. It deeply impacts my learning. So many aha moments are taking place in such a short period of time together. One of the reasons that we enable chat and that we encourage the chat is because so much of the learning happens in here, right? We can sit here and we can go through slides and we can have a discussion that's hopefully fruitful and productive. But a lot of the insights, a lot of the light bulb moments happen for people in the chat where people are sharing, they're using their own language, they're giving their own experience. And so it's a beautiful thing to be able to come together with hundreds and hundreds of people to share.
Yeah.
To see what
teaching
works.
each other.
Yeah. I love that. So thank you everybody for participating in the chat. Okay. So what we've done so far is we've gone through all of the theory. Now, how do we get to application? How is it that we take these principles at LeaderFactor and we implement them inside organizations? That's where LeaderFactor app comes in. That's where all of our courses come in. The actual training enablement piece of what LeaderFactor does. So I want to show you The CAM course, we call it CAM for short, Coaching and Accountability Matrix, lives inside leaderfactor.app in 3 pieces, we'll call them. The first is coaching tools to self-diagnose and learn. So one of the things that I think I saw a comment in here, I can't scroll up to it right now, was that we need to learn how to do this ourselves. That many people aren't even ready to use these tools outwardly. They need to first go in and reflect, right? Like you're in a box, each one of us.
That's right.
You're in a box.
That's
Hopefully we're in a 7, 8, 9. Maybe we're not. Maybe we're in a 2 and we have some work to do. And so one of the things that we do at LeaderFactor is assess. It's not enough to just train. We need to understand current state so that we can point to future state and then have some sort of intervention that helps us get there. So that's the first piece of the CAM course in the app is diagnostics, both for you as a coach and then for your direct reports. So you are looking at patterns of deflection and derailers and coaching skills. And I'll show you a couple of the reports that are in there that are pretty neat. But then you plot your direct reports inside models like this. You're looking at levels of accountability. You're looking at tell to ask, and you're looking at the matrix as a whole.
And we're using psychometric scales to be able to help you understand where you are.
Yeah, they're rigorous stuff, which is why we have all of this stuff in-house. So here's what the coaching skills looks like, right? Yes. Psychological safety, transferring ownership, accountability, transferring critical thinking to help you understand where you're at as a coach. If you don't have any sort of diagnostic, if there's no feedback mechanism, which there often isn't,
true,
you're usually in the dark. If you have a high level of self-awareness, fantastic. A lot of people don't. And so part of the aspiration in this course is to help people see where they're at, current state, look in the mirror. Here's what we're finding. You're not so good at creating an environment of psychological safety for people to engage in this process in the first place. Great. Well, we can start there. We've got derailers. This is what the derailer looks like inside the app, where you're taking an assessment. It's showing you rank ordered. Here are the things that derail your coaching more often than not. Maybe it's impulsiveness. Maybe it's ego. Maybe it's, one of any number of things. Task to outcome. We will literally show you on a chart how well you do at managing task, process, and outcome level accountability. It's a beautiful thing.
Do you know, I love that one, Junior, because a lot of times we just talk in general terms about the ability to hold people accountable. That's not good enough.
No.
That's why we break it down. How good are you at holding people accountable at task level? How about process? How about outcome? Because often you can be good at one, but not good at the others, or good at 2 and not good at 1. And so we have to break those down again.
And then the AI coach inside the app is literally unpacking all of your results, going through all of the context that you've given it, taking all of our material and helping you understand what it is you need to do next.
And I have to say, credit to the technology team, Junior, because the AI in this app is unbelievable.
It's really good.
It is so helpful.
Yeah. And it's not just like a bolt-on thing. And I can't emphasize that enough. I don't mean to disparage anything else, but often it is bolt-on. Okay. You and a higher performing team. You're here. The higher performing team's over here. We have to do something. What do we do at LeaderFactor? Training and behavior change. Now, this is the part of the webinar where you're probably expecting us to sell you something, right? That's basically, we kind of teed that up. And we've thought about, what might we do in a scenario like this, right? Should we give a discount to the app? Is that something that we should do? We can make a few bucks on the webinar. People might get a discount. They'd be really happy about that. But yeah, it probably sounds like we're teeing up a pitch, and I guess we are to some degree, but it's probably not the pitch that you're thinking. So what are we going to do? I'll tell you in just 1 second. So hang tight. The alternative to doing what we're discussing, to staying in current state, status quo, is not encouraging. It's not very appetizing. If you look at the current state, what's happening? If we neglect the training, if we neglect the behavior change, then one of 2 things will happen. Either the leader will learn through the school of hard knocks these principles over a career of decades. And we see this, right? There will be light bulb moments at year 27. And that's great. We should always be learning. But maybe there are some of those light bulbs that we should have had a decade sooner. 20 years sooner. And we can through doing some of this.
Yeah.
The other option is that we don't learn. And how does that look?
We see it.
We see it.
The passage of time does not necessarily make you a better leader.
Right.
And so we've got to be able to focus on these specific objectives, and then we can accelerate the process.
So today's launch day for us at LeaderFactor in throwing CAM out into the wild to all of you. And many of you have used a lot of our other courses. You've used EQ Index, you've used Psych Safety, you've used Epic, Adapt, and we're adding this to the catalog. So it's going to look something like this. Now, here's the pitch. You can purchase the course today for $0. We're going to give you the whole thing for free. The entire course.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
It's a pretty good deal.
It's a pretty good deal. And this is not going to be a light version. It's not going to be diluted. We're not going to pull out the key pieces. We're not going to pull out the action planning. We're not going to pull out the coaching plans. We're going to give you the whole thing right now. It's not something that you're going to have to wait a week for. It's not something that only one person gets. It's not a giveaway where 10 of you are going to get it for free. Literally every single person on this webinar will get this for free. After today's session, it will redirect you to the page to sign up to grab the course. This is one of the coolest things I think we have ever built.
It's fun.
And I get fired up about this because we have worked so hard to make this as good as we can make it. In the time that we've had, it's incredible.
It is.
The AI is amazing. The ability to plot your direct reports, the coaching plans, the action planning methodology, everything in here we hope will be valuable to you. So, why are we doing this? Why aren't we charging for it? Here's the play. And we're not this isn't Wizard of Oz. We're going to give this to you because we're so confident that it is as good as we think, that you will want to bring this into your organization to help leaders inside your organization close the gap between where they are today and where they need to go, so that you can have higher performing teams, more innovative organizations. You can stay relevant in as dynamic a time as this is. It's part of our institutional mission to influence the world for good at scale. And so there's nothing scammy, duplicitous going on right here. This is the play. We hope that you enjoy it enough that you will reach out and figure out how to bring this into your organization.
We're pretty confident in solution. Junior, we've been using these tools for years. We have finally been able to fully enable them with technology and AI. And it's pretty amazing what they can do.
You bring LeaderFactor products into your organization through certification. And that's something that you'll have an opportunity to reach out about. There will be links, there will be emails and things that you'll have access to, but we do certification so that you can deploy this content inside your organization. The CAM course can be deployed on demand or facilitated, and you can do that facilitation on site. You can do it live virtual. And that deployment, we're happy to do it for you, LF facilitated. If you want to bring us in for an executive offsite, for a group of cohort workshops, for a high potential group, we do that stuff all the time. If you want to do it yourself, you have a big team of HRBPs around the globe, and you want to do this at big scale, you can get certified to do this. But this, and not only this, the Total Access Pass is something very unique to what we're doing inside the technology. You'll get access not just to CAM through certification, but through the other products as well. So we've got
the whole suite,
the 6 domains of emotional intelligence, 4 stages of psychological safety, Epic, and a whole catalog of things that are coming down the pipe. How are you feeling about some of the things we've got on the docket?
It's incredible. Yeah. It's the most exciting time.
It's super exciting.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. Okay. So where have we been? We've talked about accountability and coaching. We've talked about transferring critical thinking, transferring ownership. This is how you do it. If there's one thing that you take away from today's conversation, it should be this model. Tim, as we wrap up today, what's on your mind? What would you leave people with before we jump into Q&A?
I can't help but think to go back to becoming a people leader means that you've got to become a force multiplier. You've got to learn how to scale impact and influence. And what does that mean? That means that you've got to become a great coach. And what does that mean? That means that you've got to learn how to transfer critical thinking and ownership. So that's the logic. if we're going to be a great people leader, it goes all the way back to being a great coach and transferring critical thinking and transferring ownership.
Yep. And for those of you out there who already have access to EQ, who already have access to 4 stages, you're going to get this too. So don't count yourself out and don't be sad about that. This is coming to you. And you know who you are. I know that there are a bunch of you out there like, man, I want that. You're going to get it. So don't worry. Okay. Wow.
That was a lot.
That was a lot of stuff.
We packed a lot into a few minutes.
We sure did. So I'm going to go ahead and stop share, and we're going to move into the Q&A. So what we've done is I've had Jillian compile a few of these questions over the last 55 minutes, and we're going to take a couple of those and go into Q&A. Thank you all for being here, by the way. That was a lot of fun content.
It was a
we
lot of
hope
fun.
that you have enjoyed it so far. Okay. What fears get in the way of leaders mastering the transfer of these skills?
I think, Junior, that the one of the biggest fears is that they equate leadership with expertise, and they equate expertise with having the answers. And so they have a hard time moving into inquiry-based leadership, just relaxing, leading through questions, and not worrying that they don't have the answers. And by the way, in a highly dynamic environment, it's impossible to keep hold of the expert model. It's just absolutely impossible. You need to be able to facilitate discovery with all of your people and work together that way. But I still see a lot of leaders feeling very, very insecure because they may not be the most knowledgeable, the most skilled, the most competent as things move so fast.
Yeah. I'll add that it's important to understand, to allay that fear a little bit, that everyone is on their own leadership journey. And if you look at the best leaders today, and I won't even say best leaders, I'll say those at the tops of organizations, because those are not always the same thing. People will think, wow, they were just born with that.
Mm-hmm.
They have this magnetism. I don't have that. I'm going to have to rely on really turning the screws on a management perspective and just tell people what to do. I'm going to have to be domineering. And those people ahead of me are just that's not my path. I can't do that. Everyone is at a stage in this journey. Everyone needs to be doing these things. You never graduate. So when you say, even as CEO, you're still leading the team.
Oh, yeah.
Those fundamentals still apply. You have to be brilliant in the basics.
Yeah.
If there is something that I've learned flying around, seeing executive teams, engaging with teams, it's that you never graduate.
No.
You never graduate. And the people at tops of organizations need this just as much as anybody else. We're all in it. Okay, let's move into the next one. How can we make transferring critical thinking appealing to both teams and leaders? How do we communicate the value? I'll start on this one.
Yeah.
You have to help them understand leverage, the team and the leader. You have to help them understand that the current state is painful, and that's the easiest way to do it. If you ask questions like the questions we asked at the beginning, how much of the critical thinking do you feel responsible for on your team? Ask a leader that. And if they come back to you and say like 80%, and honestly, I'm pretty tired.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, like I've had a lot of late nights. I lose sleep over this, and that gets really hard. Like, okay, do we want to stay there? No, we don't. What's the solution? Leverage. We need to transfer some of that stuff. And when that gets distributed across the team, when I have your back, you have my back, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I got 2 comments on that, Junior.
Yeah.
First of all, discovery is exhilarating when we do it together. And I think that we need to keep that in mind.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Because we're doing it together. And as a leader, you get to lead that process.
Yeah.
And I think if you do it in a way where it's psychologically safe, you draw people in, they're going to release their discretionary effort. They're going to have a great experience. They're going to walk away and say, wow,
yeah,
that was pretty fantastic.
Yeah. We're at the top of the hour. We're going to take just one more question. But for those of you who have a hard stop, thank you. And we'll see you in the next one. Tim, here's the last question.
Okay.
how do we preserve psychological safety as we transfer accountability? And I'll add to that, how do accountability and relationship, what's the relationship between those two things?
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the definition of psychological safety, which is that it is a function of two things, respect and permission. And so it gives us the basis, it gives us the terms of engagement to hold people accountable because we maintain respect and we provide permission. We don't violate that.
Yeah.
And if we don't violate that, then we can have some direct, even hard-hitting conversations because people understand what our intent is, where we're trying to go. So what do we care about? We do care about the performance of the organization. We care about your development as an individual.
Yeah.
That matters. So the intent matters, and then it allows you to provide those conditions where you can hold people accountable.
Yep.
So don't misinterpret psychological safety for being nice, because that's not what it is.
Yeah. Well, everybody, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us. For those of you who lost a little bit of sleep to be here, hopefully you got your value out of today's conversation. The links will be sent to the full CAM course, as I said just a few minutes ago, to everybody on the webinar. You have until Monday, end of business, I think we did 5 Eastern, to enroll in the course, and you'll have 30 days full access to that course. Use the tools, please. Use it. Squeeze every last drop of value you can out of the course and let us know how it is. We would love to hear your feedback. We've done all of our betas. We've done our soft launch. Now we're out in the world with this thing. And so we would love to hear what you think. If you liked today's conversation, we would also encourage you to subscribe to the podcast. You can do that wherever podcasts live, wherever you consume content like this. The YouTube channel is a great place to go. You can see the video, the slides, and everything in a similar format as we did today. So with that, we will say thank you. Tim, any final words?
Just thank you. Great experience. Good to be with you. Good to be with everybody.
And big shout out to the LeaderFactor team for making all of this possible. We hope you all have a great weekend. We will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.